is the first sort of longer set that I've had in about, I don't know, about 3 years or so. And part of that was because I took the longest break that I've taken from poetry since I started doing it. Only about, well, I say only, for me it was huge, but about 8 months. And I think if you've been writing for decades, then maybe an 8-month gap isn't such a big deal. But it was very difficult for me. But as a result of that, in that time, I got to think a lot about craft, a lot about why I do what I do in poetry, how I do it, how I would like to change that. So a lot of what I'm going to be reading and talking about has to do not just with craft, but with my approach to poetry in general, sort of my perspective on it. So hopefully that's interesting. If it's not, you don't have to tell me. I'll be able to tell by your face probably. Phil put together the promotion for this, and I don't know where you managed to dig up that piece that you sent around. This is a poem that I wrote in 2009, 10 at the absolute latest, and understandably I feel like a very different person, and so seeing that, and I kind of just glanced through it really quickly, felt very uncomfortable. And talking about craft and approach to poetry, something that I've realized about myself is I really thrive on that kind of feeling. I like a challenge. I like putting myself into uncomfortable situations creatively to see what happens. So I'm going to read that piece in just a second, but I'm going to read first the piece that inspired it, which was a Billy Collins poem, and who was really the first contemporary poet that made me feel okay writing in the style that I wrote. So I'm going to begin with his piece, which is called Another Reason Why I Don't Keep a Gun in the House. The neighbor's dog will not stop barking. He is barking the same high, rhythmic bark that he barks every time they leave the house. They must switch him on their way out. The neighbor's dog will not stop barking. I close all the windows in the house and put on a Beethoven symphony, full blast, but I can still hear him muffled under the music, barking, 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 and now I can see him sitting in the orchestra, his head raised confidently, as if Beethoven had included a part for barking dog. When the record finally ends, he is still barking, sitting there in the oboe section barking, his eyes fixed on the conductor who is entreating him with his baton, while the other musicians listen in respectful silence to the famous barking dog solo, that endless coda that first established Beethoven as an innovative genius. Yeah, please feel free to clap for Billy Collins. One thing I really want to take advantage of when given an opportunity to read for more than just an open mic is to bring in other poets. You know, you often get that with bands that you see. They'll do a cover song of a band that really influenced them. And I wish poets would do that more often, so I've been trying to make more of an effort to do that. Right, so this is my piece, and why this is extremely uncomfortable is because I don't recognize the person who wrote it, really. So I'm going to go through it, and we'll see how that goes. It'll be a good experience for me, nonetheless. It's called Another Reason Why I Don't Keep a Barking Dog in the House, which I guess now has become somewhat ironic because we have a puppy, and she's just learned how to bark. There are people upstairs. I can hear them. Their crow feet scratch above my ceiling and keep me up at night thinking about the dead bodies that must be stuffed in their refrigerators. During the day, I tiptoe on bare feet, hoping that they won't notice me. My wife wanted me to get a dog, but I told her no. It would surely disturb the people upstairs. When I waited for her response, I realized I wasn't married and was talking to a porcelain swan. Its concave eyes sucked me in through some kind of portal and left me in an apartment building suspended in space. It had only 2 rooms, mine and the one above it. I waited silently for the people upstairs to make some kind of sound, but they didn't. They must have figured out that I was listening instead of sleeping. I spent hours staring out my window at the infinite emptiness, waiting to hear the creak of a door or their feet scraping against the wood. It took so much restraint to not edit that before reading it tonight, or today. That was the thing that I really wanted to focus on, is to see what that feeling would be like. And it was alright. It was alright for me. Hopefully that was okay for you. I'm going to read more recent pieces. And if you end up preferring the older piece to the recent pieces, then that's another thing that you don't have to tell me afterwards. This is a love poem, and I set the challenge of doing a piece like this for a friend. I think typically when we have love poems on our stages, it's usually the speaker talking to their partner, their romantic partner. Sometimes you get familial love poems. Friendships are by far the kinds of relationships that I get the most out of, to the point where other kinds of relationships just sort of become friendships in my head. So I've been with the same partner for a long time. We're in a romantic relationship, but I think of her first as a friend. And that really happens with everybody who's close to me. So I wanted to sort of honor that and write a piece for one of my close friends. And in a way that is unusual for me, in that there wasn't really, I don't know, what you would call a weightiness behind it, from my perspective. And I was worried that it would sort of feel a bit empty. And instead, what I wanted to try to do was capture some snapshots. So her birthday was last month, on the 5th of May. So these are 5 stanzas, sort of imagined conversations between the two of us on her birthday, when we can't be next to one another. The first conversation takes place at the table over coffee you have made. I am overcome by 5 things. The first is the thought that you never tell anyone you worked in a cafe. When they compliment you after the first sip, you just say, "Thanks." The second is the thought that I have to ask you so many questions because I don't know much about coffee. The third is the understanding I'm okay not knowing things around you. The fourth is the green of your eyes. The fifth is that last sip. If any of it was even vaguely bitter, I don't remember tasting it. The second conversation takes place on the couch as we begin a film. Why do you say film, you ask, while the film is playing? Why don't you just say movie? What's the difference between a film and a movie? If I answer that question, will you actually watch this? What is this film about, anyway? It's about a student who needs to get an illegal abortion in communist Romania. Is it sad? What do you think? Well, why are we watching it then? Because it's good! Well, fuck off, Sean. No, you fuck off. Fine, I love you. Fine, I love you too. The third conversation takes place in the car with heavy metal playing. Words are not used. This is how I understand you best. When we watch movies, you won't shut up. But in this moment, even just the empty road is an unwelcome distraction. Our heartbeats synchronize with the guitar riffs, and when the solo begins, I follow your lead. The fourth conversation takes place in the garage, or the garage, as you would say, which gets us started on stuff that isn't important, but we make impassioned arguments anyway because we both hate losing. After a few bong hits, we become comfortable in each other's quiet. Our thoughts and memories rise individually but together. The fifth conversation takes place in bed. Here, too, words are not used. The moment is not sexual. It is more. You little spoon along my insides. My hand is on the top of yours, so when you stretch, it looks like we're trying to hail the same cab but sideways. You could be anyone, really, because the conversation is about what happens when two people touch, the moment when I becomes we. You could be anyone, really, but I'm glad you're you. Thank you. This piece is probably the one I was most excited to work on. It deals, I guess, more explicitly with my approach to poetry, craft a little bit in general. It has a quote here at the beginning. I don't think it's going to be an epigraph, but it's more like it was the prompt for this piece, I suppose. It's a quote from Kobe Bryant during an interview that he gave, one of the last really good interviews before he died. I'll read the quote first of all. Basketball for me was the most important thing. So everything I saw, whether it was TV shows, whether it was books I read, people I talked to, everything was done to try to learn how to become a better basketball player. Everything. And so when you have that point of view, then literally the world becomes your library to help you to become better at your craft. I was really struck by the choice of the word craft in that, and in retrospect, it's not surprising at all that he would have viewed himself in that way, as an artist, somebody working diligently every day trying to get better at this thing. And a lot of his approach to basketball, which was a big part of my upbringing, is stuff that I've tried to apply to poetry and the writing of poetry. And it's a kind of perspective that is sometimes uncomfortable, and it's one that I understand why a lot of people would shy away from it. A lot of people don't thrive on competition, for instance, and this isn't necessarily, I'm not competitive as a poet with other poets. It's more, I know what I think I'm capable of, so I'm competitive with myself to try to get there. And it's constantly a matter of trying to push that a little bit further and further. So this is about that. And really about what happens on a day like this prior to coming to a reading that I'll be doing. This is called Game Day. Make everything quiet. Everything. Only the memory of electricity humming in the next room. Go outside and see. See the woman walking as you overtake her. She is so small she moves faster than you and travels less. Open the book of this moment. Read about the boy who is too short to play basketball, how he cries, how he wishes he could grow more. Read a little bit further about the man who wants nothing if it is easy, how he gets in his own way on purpose just to see how he responds, how he wishes he could tell the boy, play without your shoes. Give them every inch so there are no excuses when you learn how to beat them barefoot. Close the book of this moment. Turn the corner and see. See the footballers on the pitch lacing up their cleats. Open the book of this moment. Read about the boy who is afraid of roller coasters. This is not how he gets his kicks. Read about the man who is afraid of roller coasters, but will take the most important pieces of himself, dig them out from his insides, and tie their ends together just so he can present them to actual people. This is his roller coaster. This is not ordinary. This is not easy. Do not let it become ordinary, and do not let it become easy. Close the book of this moment. Look up and see. See the lone crow. Even his cries get caught in the quiet. See him follow you through the trees. Open the book of this moment. Read about symbolism. Read all the poems with crows and how no one agrees, and how this doesn't matter. Read whatever it is you need to read. Right now, it is change, transformation. Close the book of this moment, but as you do, look up and see the lone crow again. Go to him. Become.